that we do have are fairly low on the language acquisition scale, meaning that they're really either new to the country or they are really in the beginning stages of acquiring that language, and that this would really give them the opportunity to have an ESL teacher working with them with the content that they need in order to be successful for the following year. So this would be a year-long course, and they would take the bio the following year. You want to talk to the science side a little
Sure.
bit?
I did ask Mrs. Baker for some historical data about the number of students that this course would serve, and on average, it's probably between 8 to 12 students per year. So it would be almost an ideal class size for a course of this nature. And again, having the staff member already in place is beyond ideal. I have commitments from 2 other teachers to assist with the curriculum writing aspect of it all. One from our kind of, I guess, chemistry department or sub-department, and another in our biology department, who are both very strong in those areas, just to cover the foundational work and those essential concepts that we feel like are most important for these students to have exposure to and to dive into before jumping into the full-blown biology course, to better prepare them for success a year later. And just, lay the groundwork, establish science literacy number 1, and then, start to gain that exposure and that familiarity with a lot of the concepts that are troubling, our native English-speaking students. And just giving them that additional time and exposure to work through those concepts with a teacher who knows how to properly scaffold and support, I think will be exceptional. So in terms of staffing, again, we're at an advantage, because the cost associated with, initializing this course is, restricted to curriculum writing. And it would just be the time for these teachers to collaborate. And again, we'd like to see mostly a chemistry, physics, component, and pretty strong emphasis on the biology component to help them better prepare. Any questions? Okay. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tina.
Thank you
Yep,
very
of
much.
So the next item is our class rank discussion. Class rank GPA information.
So 4 of us will be presenting on this topic this evening. I will begin it, and Mr. Intangible, and I will replace Dr. Bolton. So as many of you know, we've been discussing class rank for the past, thank you. There you go. Several years. As early as last spring, we had a full presentation, and then there were questions by the committee and board members, and we came back and we presented again. So I do believe overall this might be the 4th time that we're coming to have this discussion with you. We're here to seek your feedback on the recommendations that we will be presenting this evening. I do want to publicly thank Dr. Bolton for his guidance and his leadership, as well as Ms. DeBona, who was unable to be here tonight but certainly wanted to, Mr. Japlicki, Dr. Price, and the high school guidance department for their contributions to the overall recommendations, because this has been happening over a number of years, the ideas. And I also want to let you know that we will be sharing this information with the high school staff, the 4 of us, on Thursday, to ask them, solicit some feedback from them as well. So thank you again for taking the opportunity, or for giving us the opportunity to talk about class rank. It really has been something that has troubled us, has caused some angst over the past couple of years that we hope to be able to rectify. So we'll start by, and I'll be giving you a broad picture, but we will get in depth, and particulars will be discussed. But so we talked about what are the goals, what are we trying to accomplish when we look at class rank or relook at it, and we want to increase student recognition. We do. We are looking at ways to do that. You're going to see some additional ideas that we may not have discussed, so that we can provide student recognition to more students. We also want to encourage students to take the appropriate rigorous courses, and we want to incentivize AP placement, advanced placement courses. So why are we make these changes? We're trying, so additionally, in terms of goals, we want to eliminate the reporting of class rank, but we will include a decile information for the graduating class on the school profile. When we get to slide 5, you'll actually see what that is. So I think for 2018, top 5% was at 4.4 and above. So you'll see that. So we want to include the decile information on the school profile. I'm sorry that you can't see this whole screen here. We'll also be looking at GPA. It'll be based, we'd like it to be based solely on performance and the strength of the class and remove the current credit divisor. Mr. Japuki will be talking more in depth about that. We also really looked at our grading system, and we would like to make the recommendation to add the plus minus to our letter grades. We really do believe, but you'll see that actual slide on what that looks like. It'll give students and parents a better picture of performance and a more precise GPA. We'd like to look at the Laude system and recognize students for their level of achievement or performance, just like the college system is. So we'll be looking at cum laude, magna cum laude, summa cum laude, that our students would be able to graduate with that honor. The student move-ins, that has caused some angst over the past couple of years with our current policy. So we need to be looking at non-Pennridge high school course credit will not exceed allowable credit for students who attend Pennridge High School for all 4 years. That has affected Pennridge students over the last couple of years, and we would like to make that change as well. In terms of college courses, the college courses will impact the student's GPA, and in terms of a major content area, we would be providing honors weighting. And for elective areas, we would assigning academic weighting. So these are the broad, big picture areas. Mr. Japuki will be next, and he'll talk more in depth about those.
This next slide is actually a screenshot of our
Can you see
current
that?
high school profile, which colleges and other institutions receive when they receive our transcripts from our students from our school. And what Dr. Seid just mentioned is that we would also be adding the deciles to that profile, so that, as an example, then they're using the numbers from the class of 2018. We would be able to let colleges know what the GPA was for the various percentiles and how many, what the levels of performance was in each of those percentiles, all the way down to the 50th percentile. And if you want more, we could do more. But just to give you an example of what that would mean, and that just basically tells a college a little bit more about the overall performance of the high school. Another part that Dr. Scheid had mentioned that we are recommending is to change the current grading scale to add plus minus grading. For those of you who are not aware, right now our grading scale is a very simplified A, B, C, D grading scale, where we have an AP column, we have an honors column, and an academic column, like you see there, but there are no pluses and minuses. Certainly gets an A for simplicity, but in terms of truly rewarding students for their efforts and what they've done to accomplish something over the years, is extremely, it's not as valuable as something where we add in the pluses and minuses to the scale. As you can see as you might imagine, in a plain ABCD grading system, a student who has an 81 might not feel any motivation to get an 85 or an 86 or an 87, because there's no additional reason to do so in terms of GPA and under the current system rank. Same holds true for an A. So if you could imagine a student sitting at an 80 and a student sitting at 100, in terms of value in GPA, or merely just a little notch across the 89 to 90 barrier. And I think we think this is something that gives students more recognition, and certainly a more accurate picture of their efforts and their accomplishments of where they stand, and certainly hopefully a little bit more of a motivation. Well, I got a B minus, like maybe I can get a B, and maybe I can get a B plus, and so forth and so on. It certainly makes it more doable if you look at it from that perspective. Additionally, another piece that we sought to change or improve was incentivizing AP courses. Of course, we want students to do well in AP courses. We encourage them to take the AP exams and do well on those as well. But we also feel that AP is a valuable experience for any student to have at some point in their high school career because it does present the same type of rigor they're going to see in college. And for every student to experience that in some way would be great. One thing that holds a lot of our students back currently is they feel, well, if I don't get an A, I'm not going to take it, because if I can't get an A, I'm not going to bother. Well, now as you can see, if you look at the AP, the quality points for AP, at least on the upper part there, it outweighs some of the quality points for honors. Certainly nothing wrong with taking honors courses. They're rigorous as well, but we certainly want to make sure students understand that not getting an A plus or an A in an AP course is okay. It's okay to get an A minus or a B because the research shows that students who take AP courses, just that level of rigor, they feel better prepared going into college. And I think we just heard a little bit about that with the AP Capstone program, where just that type of rigor is extremely important for our students.
Can I just make one question? I think there's two things I want to mention. Sure. Our current system, because we're not showing the current chart, but our current system only has this A column, right? There is no such thing as an A plus or an A minus in our current system. Right. And the honors jump. So we're all used to an A being a 4.0, right? That's the system we're all used to. Our current honors weight is a 0.5. So in our current one, that would be 4.5. Our AP is worth a 0.8. And so a student who gets an A and an AP gets a 4.8, and then a kid in honors gets a 4.5. You then have to jump down to this 3.0 because it's the next column that exists, right? We don't currently have these other two columns. Our current system would say an AP student who gets a B would get a 3.8. And so that means the difference between getting a B and an AP and getting an A and an honors is 0.7, which is a pretty significant jump in a GPA. And that's what we mean in terms of, we feel like our current system incentivizes students to take honors if you're not sure. So if a student's sitting there talking to a teacher or talking to a guidance counselor going, I love science, but I'm not sure AP Bio is right or whether I should take honors Bio because I'm afraid I'll get the B, right? This system, really what we tried to do is say it's worth 2 steps. And so if you get an A in honors, we sat around a table and said, what's that worth? In an AP course, what's that worth? And we all had different answers, which is a neat conversation to think about. But if you look at it, it basically is 2 steps. Okay. Where an A in an honors course is the equivalent of a B plus in an AP course. So it is 2 steps, the A minus and the B plus. Now, it doesn't always work mathematically to be exactly the same because they're not all worth, because you have the 3s and the 4s in terms of, and so here you have a 4.6 and it's a 4.7 in an AP. But it is still roughly 2 steps in terms of the equivalency of being able to do that. And that's where you got these numbers. The recommendation is a plus 0.3 in honors and a plus 1.0 in APs. So that APs are incentivized over honors. We do feel as though hopefully that will push students to more rigorous courses. We'll have our top students taking more APs, but even having more of our honors students try 1 AP. To say, all right, what's the area I'm most passionate about? Let me try it, and do those types of things. The other thing you'll notice is that we decided there would be no incentivizing of anything below a C. That even though Ds are passing, we decided that Cs were proficient and anything below a C was less than proficient, which means if you do take a course and get a D of any kind or worse, you can see that they are all exactly the same. There would be no incentive for taking an AP course simply to get a D minus in it. Right, and just say, let me get a GPA bump from that standpoint. So, from that standpoint. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we back it up?
A lot to take in.
I'm just a little bit surprised though, that you think between academic and honors, the difference is 0.3, but between honors and AP, it's 0.7. not?
No, no.
Well, I guess I'm looking at A.
It's
Yeah,
one.
it's either 0.7 or 0.6.
4.3,
Yeah.
5.0, and so isn't honors really only a 0.3 difference from academic, but an AP is?
And so the question is, and that's obviously an opinion statement you're asking.
Well, no,
And so
I'm not
that's-
sure, I'm surprised, it seems small in comparison, maybe,
It does seem like a big jump.
I just, I think,
And the
AP
conversation
courses, honors
really
courses are
was-
are
Yeah.
much more rigorous than academic courses, so.
I agree, as are AP courses more rigorous than
Right.
honors courses, right? And so the question really is, how much is it worth in terms of step? And so academic to honors is basically one step, the difference between taking an academic and an honors. As opposed to honors to AP, we incentivized it by making it 2 steps instead of 1. And that really is the difference, where our current system, if we were to have it up there and you look at the steps, it is incentivizing honors courses.
Yeah.
When you say 2 steps though, if you look at,
Look at it.
So
2
take,
steps from that would be 4.6, but this is 5.
no, so
So 2
taking,
steps up from a 4.0, wouldn't that be a 4.6, but instead you're at a 5.0?
so I'm talking about if you got an A in an honors course, that is the equivalent of getting 2 steps lower in an AP course. I'm talking about 2 steps when you go from honors
Oh, from honors
to
to
AP. Right, if you're obviously going from academic to AP, it's 3 steps, because it's the 1 to honors and then the 2 more to AP. But really, when kids are making the decision, they're making the decision here, or they're making the decision here. Right, there aren't a lot of students sitting in academics saying, I'm gonna try the AP, they're talking about taking honors.
Right.
So, the way we currently have it,
Yes.
are you saying that students are GPA at the C plus in the honors, staying away from?
Yeah, that
So,
should be 2.6.
Let me repeat the question for you. Oh, yeah, so we have a typo right here, that should be 2.6 apparently, right? So thank you for noticing. I want to repeat the question. The question was, are we having students who are padding their GPA simply by taking honors courses? Right? So I want to separate the type of students we're talking about in terms of the profile, right? Because I've looked pretty heavily at this year's senior class and last year's senior class. So they're my only 2 data points in terms of looking at the data. The students who are at the top end, so if you're looking at our top 100 students or so, they are all over this column, right? And so hopefully we are incentivizing more students to be in that column. But the students who are at the top of our class are already taking the AP because it's already the bump, right? It's 0.8 is more than 0.5. So if you're looking to be ranked near the top of the class, or it's an appropriate course, right? Not all students do it for rank. Or it's an appropriate course, they're taking the APs already. And so really the question is, where are the students in this column that can be bumped to this column, and what does it take to get them to incentivize to do that? And so the thought process is, this chart, because it does have a bigger jump from honors to AP than from academic to honors, encourages those students to take an AP course in an area that they have a strength in or an interest in from that standpoint. We would, much rather have a student sit in an AP course in high school and get a sense for what does college biology look like, right? And so they take that course even if they get a B or a B plus or whatever they're gonna get, because they're still really good students. We're not gonna have a lot of students take APs and fail, right? That's not the type of the process we're talking about. As opposed to a student saying, it's not worth the gamble because my GPA is gonna suffer by 0.7 if I get the B in an AP as opposed to an A in an honors, which is what the current grading system says. So, and obviously this is something that if this is what ends up happening, we then evaluate that, right? We know how many students took APs this year. We evaluate that to the number of students who take it next year, the students who take it the following year, because not all these things implement for 1 year, right? And so obviously depending on the change, it's for different classes, and you'll see that at the end, because we don't want to change the rules for current seniors, right? And there are some rules we don't even want to change for current juniors, because they've been playing by the same rules for 3 years, and they're about to pick classes. So we don't want to change the rules for them, where current freshmen, it feels a little more fair to change some rules, because their schedules are more similar than upperclassmen, because there are fewer options for freshmen, right? Especially in the AP column.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Did that help?
Yes.
Okay.
I can always go back, so feel free. Moving forward, because the new grading table allows for more precision, it also allows more accurate representation of achievement. And based on that and the fact that we want to make sure we recognize students, we spoke in the spring of a cum laude system, which is similar to colleges and what they do. And you can see we have the various levels, the summa, the magna, and the cum laude system with the GPA numbers based on our current system, not the new. This is not based on the new table. This is based on our current system, just to give you a sense of what that might look like. Down the bottom, the last bullet there mentions intangible recognition at graduation. At this point, the one piece, and we're waiting on, the high school team is also having conversations about what their recommendation would be or wouldn't be for how to do that logistically. But certainly, many schools do some sort of a symbol system within their graduation programs, for various levels of achievement for students. So that would be at least part of some sort of tangible recognition, whether we ask our SUMA students to stand or whatever it might be. Those decisions have yet to be at least finalized in terms of a full recommendation in terms of what tangible recognition would be. But this would be the recognition system. The SUMA level at this point lands somewhere a little bit above 10%, right around 12%. I'm pretty sure. So it's that similar group of students that we now acknowledge or have acknowledged in the past as our top 10%. This is a little comparison. Again, sorry, we're chopping off here on the presentation. We just wanted to compare where students would sit in terms of percentile with a particular GPA, and then what their recognition would be at graduation if that were to change, say right now. And again, the percentiles, so top 12 or so would be at a summa. And then we have the magna and the cum laude. Just for your reference, from what we've looked at and what we've heard from other schools doing it, and what's the rationale, where do you make the cutoffs? About a little bit less than 40% in colleges tend to get these recognitions. And again, that varies because colleges have much more leeway, but about 40% would receive some sort of recognition in terms of the cum laude system as it stands now. Go ahead. Yep, sorry.
Can I make sure that this screen sinks in with you, because the one topic here that will garner the most conversation is class rank, right? At least from a public standpoint, it will. I don't know where the board is in terms of that conversation as to whether class rank should be eliminated or not eliminated. And this really is from a numbers standpoint, because if we had not put that last column on, I would have said, is a 4.2 GPA, where does that fit in? This is last year's graduating class, okay, not using the divisor. So this is using the non-divisor system. Their GPAs, they calculate GPAs two different ways currently, because they use the divisor, so they're higher. But if you do it the college way, our GPAs were there. We had 66 students, which means if I asked the student who had a 4.2 to stand up, their rank is 66th. And so they sound very different to colleges in terms of what that looks like, which is why the decile ranking is important from a college standpoint, because the colleges who know Pennridge don't need any of this information. They don't care what we do, right? Because they know our system, they know our students, they know the quality of our program and the types of kids that come there. So the Penn States, the Millersvilles, the Kutztowns, the Pitts, the ones that we have lots of students who attend, don't need this information and you'll see in the quotes, they really don't care what we do from that standpoint, because every school does something differently, so they strip it back anyway. It's if you start applying to a school that doesn't know Pennridge. So you apply to a University of Colorado, you apply to a Stanford, you apply to schools where we wouldn't have as many students applying because they're really far away, or they're elite, or they're very specialized, like a College of the Mines in Colorado. There's a very specialized engineering program. The rank versus the decile, they need to know, if I'm a 4.2, where did that put me? Because it might be different in Neshaminy. A 4.2 in Neshaminy is not the same as a 4.2 at Hatboro, and it's not the same as a 4.2 in CB, and it's not the same as a 4.2 in Pennridge. And that's not good, bad, or it's just different. And so they need to know, where are you in comparison to your peers. They don't care if you're 66th. 60th or 68th, right? They care where are you roughly, and so that's why that decile would show you you're at the top end of the second decile, right? You're just outside the top 10. They don't care whether you're 11th percentile or 12th percentile, but we're still communicating that to them through using the decile ranking. Right? Does that make sense in terms of the number of kids who have above a 4.0 is awesome, right? But if you're a kid sitting at 4.0, your rank was about 125th, which isn't good, bad, or anything, but it is, I think, when you look at the numbers, go, oh my goodness, right? We have more than 20% of our kids up to 4.0 or higher, which is great, right? But 4.0, when we hear that, we think, oh, top of the class. Well, no, it's not. That decile communication, I think, is important, which is why we put it on the profile. All right, because I expect there to be some class rank conversation, so I just wanted to make sure we park on that piece before we left it, just so that you have that in your head when we talk about that. As opposed to being able to say summa, when you look at top 10% or even top 10 for that matter, that is a cutoff and only X number of kids can get it. When you move to a summa, every kid hypothetically could be 4.2 or higher. You could have 500 kids who meet 4.2 if they get the good enough grades. And so they could all be recognized for their achievement as opposed to their achievement in comparison to their peers, right? And so that's why colleges do that, and that's why high schools who have changed have done that, because then it's based on what David Bolton does. It's not what David Bolton does versus Bill Krause that makes it, you know, in terms of how they're reporting that piece. We can both be summa cum laude. The fact that he is and doesn't make it less likely that I am, because it's based off only my performance and my GPA. It's not only 59 kids, which is what it was last year, right? There were 592 kids in the graduating class last year, so 59 of them were top 10%. Well, if you were number 60, it didn't matter what your GPA was, you weren't top 10%, because it didn't matter. And so some years that's a 4.2, some years that's a 4.4, some years that's a 4.1, because some classes do better than others in terms of academically, right? I won't tell you this year's versus last year, because then the seniors would get a big head in terms of their performance. But in terms of if you look at their ranking versus last year and things like that. All right, sorry, I slowed us down.
Okay. So, data was collected for several schools, universities, including the schools you see listed here. Contacts were made between the high school counseling department and admission departments at these schools. We wanted to see how they currently feel about class rank as it relates to college entry. Unanimously, these schools reported that transcripts without class rank do not hurt a student's chances of being accepted into the school. The sentiment was that the value of class rank is, on the whole, declining. Here are some responses from two highly regarded universities. Drexel estimated that half of the applicants came from high schools that did not report class rank. This came from someone that worked in admissions for 21 years at Drexel. Cornell stated that they also receive a class rank for less than half of their applicants. Class rank is neither an advantage nor a disadvantage, since the academic strength of a candidate is determined from a much broader picture and the reputation of the sending school, as Dr. Bolton mentioned, when they know the schools. Class rank is not required for Penn State, although they do receive some of them on transcripts. GPA is the most important academic piece for admission decisions according to their admissions department. School profiles that the colleges receive outline the high school grading scales, etc., any nuances that maybe are specific to that high school. So the university understands the grading system going into it, so they can compare students from your school to students from your school. The University of Pennsylvania also stated that class rank does not adversely affect student admissions. "19 districts in the area were surveyed here, and you can see the schools who responded listed at the bottom. A little less than half of these high schools report class rank. In fact, two, at the time of the data analysis being collected, said they were moving away from that in the very near future. None of these schools reported using total credits as an additional multiplier to calculate class rank, as we currently do that this year. Colby, do you want to add anything to that?
Would you just click for me? This is just, there's then two summary slides. One is just a summary of the items that we have said out loud, but we just want to put them in one page so that you understand in terms of the topics that are happening. So obviously we talked about the cum laude system, talked about plus or minus weighted grades, talked about awarding honors credit for some college courses. And so college courses currently, if you take them, they do show up in your transcript. So there are rules about the college courses students can take. It shows up on their transcript, but there is no GPA impact whatsoever. So you're given credit for them, but you are not given any quality points for them. It's like you audited the course, although your grade does show up. And so what we are proposing is to incentivize some of those courses for students who have an outside interest that they may not be able to meet at Pennridge, or they have a scheduling issue and they're using our cyber courses in terms of capitalizing on some of those, and to assign, if it is an academic course, to assign it an honors weighting. If it is a non-academic course, to continue to give it a non-academic weight and treat it like an academic course. And so we're trying to differentiate between really three different types of college courses, because the initial Bucks County Community College, when they met with us, said, oh, well, we're college courses, we should get AP for everything we take, because AP courses are college courses, so if it's a college course, it should be AP. And so we then looked at it, and the very first transcript I looked at, a student had taken yoga at Bucks County Community College. And I said, that's great, I'm sure it was the perfect course for this young lady to take in terms of that. I'm not sure I'd be to the point where I would want to recommend that that would be an AP level course, even though it is a college course that they would get college credit for if they go to Bucks County Community College or wherever they have accreditation agreements with. And so the idea is to think about if you're taking a biology course, right, and at those levels, that is equivalent to our honors biology course, and you get honors weighted. Where if you're taking an elective course, you're taking a specialized art course or something that we might not offer, that would be an academic. Because here, if you're taking an art course, there would not be weight for it from that standpoint. So it doesn't give the student an advantage, but it doesn't tell them, no, you shouldn't go express your interest somewhere if it's outside of what we currently can offer at the high school level. We are recommending that we continue with the tradition of recognizing the top 10 students at graduation. Currently, the tradition is to give those students their diplomas first, so the first 10 students who are announced. And we are recommending that tradition continue, and we'll nuance that on the next slide. We are recommending the elimination of reporting of class rank on transcripts. We obviously will continue to calculate GPA. I told the committee my story. I have 3 children in college. They all have attended competitive colleges and applied for multiple scholarships, and they were asked once. One child for one scholarship needed his class rank, and so he contacted his guidance counselor, got his class rank, and was able to put that on. So we will provide that if the college needs it, as opposed to just putting that on transcripts. Adding the decile information on the school profile, continuation of a senior academic achievement event. One of the following presentations that we'll do in another month or so is to talk about increased recognition. What does that look like through the year? What does that look like at graduation? Some of those tangible things that Mr. Saplicki talked about that we're working with the high school administration. And then obviously the reason we're bringing it to you is all of this impacts policy, not all of it. The vast majority of this impacts policy 214. And so once we get the feedback and we have a final recommendation, that will require policy changes, which will require board approval. There is nothing up here that requires your approval until we put it in policy. And so that will have to eventually happen, but we obviously want your feedback, because we don't put something in policy that we know we're going to come back and you're going to say no, or the teachers are going to say, oh, that was a really dumb idea, right? And so we want to make sure that we get all of that feedback before we put it into policy, but we would have to turn around. Much of this would show up in policy, not all of it if you read 214. Like the school profile isn't mentioned, so the decile is something that we're letting you know, in terms of making recommendations that way. Here's some timing standpoint, because we had a lot of, why don't you do it on the computer that works? You should let me go for a little while longer, that would have been funny. And so here are some of the suggestions and what we could change and when. So the top 3 bullets are for this year, which means every student who's currently at Pennridge would be impacted by it. So we are suggesting that we do institute the cum laude system. We put it on top of the class rank system. right? So that students would know their class rank, but then we could also recognize summa cum laude, magna cum laude, and whatever that recognition looks like at graduation to honor those students. It would change if you think about one of the goals we're talking about, right? It was, right now, the first 10 students get their diplomas, right? And that is the academic achievement that is recognized. In this current system, last year, 166 students would have been recognized for their academic achievement at some level, as well as those 10 students, right? So that's that piece. The inclusion of the decile information, we don't think communicating that to colleges immediately changes anything, but provide them a little more information about our class. And so that doesn't hurt students or help students, it just provides better information to everybody in terms of where are you from a percentage standpoint, as well as we need to start working through the policy, because we can't change many of these things without there being policy conversations. That would have to happen this year. Within that, then, our recommendations for next school year, which means it would impact next year's students, so any current junior or younger would be impacted by this, that we recommend that we do implement plus minuses beginning next year, because that impacts everybody at the same level. And so everybody would be on the same playing field and has had the same rules for however many years they've been at Pennridge, and now the rules would change for everybody. And we would go to a plus minus, as well as implementing the college courses being weighted as an honors. We debated this one, but this is not something that students would be using to game the system to be ranked number 2. Because it's weighted at honors, that's not enough to bump you over the top. And so students wouldn't be taking advantage of this by saying, oh, I can move up from 5 to 3 if I go take 2 courses at Bucks, because the weight wouldn't be enough, the GPA increase would not be enough for that. So we're recommending that start next year as well, to incentivize that for students to take college courses. And then the other 3 that do change the rules, we are recommending that we change those for the current freshman class, so not until the school year 21-22, so current freshmen and below, that we would eliminate reporting class rank that year. So for the next 3 years, we would recommend that we continue to report class rank the way we've been doing that. I'll skip to the 3rd bullet, that we would continue to recognize the top 10 students right now. And so what we're recommending following that is that we actually recognize the top 10 students alphabetically. Right now, the top 10 students, I don't think I'm letting a secret out of the bag, are not announced 10 through 1, but they are announced in order. So as long as you're paying attention, you know who's 10 and who's 1. Right? Now, it's never said that way. They're never said in our valedictorian is, but it is announced in a certain order. If you are moving away from class rank, it does not seem to be consistent. You then would announce the top 10. And so we are suggesting that we do recognize the top 10, but we do it alphabetically, so that there's no way to know whether Bolton was ahead of Krause in the ranking. It's just my last name came first. Right, and so I get recognized before Bill Krause in terms of my diploma, but those would be the first 10 students who would still receive their diploma. We do feel as though that's a nice tradition at Pennridge, and does provide a level of academic recognition for students who have worked their tails off. Right, you don't get to be the top 10 without working your tail off. And so that would be, continuing that tradition, but we would have to nuance it because class rank goes away with that group, as well as then the elimination of the divisor in calculating GPA. So currently the GPAs are divided by sum, multiple of 6, and it's a complicated system if you're not knee deep in it. So I can explain it to you, but needless to say, it benefits certain types of students and certain. They're not gaming the system, but it does. There are ways to benefit from the current system. It is not simply. So a student could have identical GPAs, if you look at it this way, but their class ranks could be very different because of the number of credits you take. And so it is not just based off performance, it's also based off of the number of credits you took, which is what sometimes has benefited incoming transfer students. Because if you come from a system that allows you to take more than 7 credits a year, you would benefit under the current system. And so we are recommending, that's why we recommended that students moving in will only get credited with 7 credits per year. We will recognize all of their courses, and so we'll show they took 8 classes or 10 classes, whatever they took, but they'll only get GPA credit for 7 of them, because that's what a Pennridge student would do. So the rest is equal in terms of where it looks. Okay?
So, is it time for questions yet?
Yes, because that's the last slide.
So what you're saying is you would the number of credits would no longer affect it? Is that what you're saying? That would no longer be a factor?
Correct. We would do it like, I'm not sure there's any other school that doesn't do it. Well, there has to be somebody. But when you think about a GPA calculation is always quality points divided by credits. Quality points are that chart that we looked at, that 4.0, 5.0, 4.3. Those are your quality points for that class. You simply add them all up and divide by the number of credits you took. And so lots of students will take 28 credits because it's 7 credits a year. They might have 27 credits because they had to study hall. You would just do that division and you get a 4 point something, a 3 point something. That is your GPA. And so that would be the same for everybody. So a student who took 24 credits would be divided by 24. If I took 27, it would be divided by 27. The current system benefits the students who took 27 over the student who took 24.
And the new system would could benefit the students that are 24 over 27 because they're doing less work, taking less course. So if
It would
you
come down to
decided
the
to take
level of
less
course you took.
courses,
It would come down to the level of course you took and the grades you got would determine your GPA.
but when you're a senior, you don't
Correct.
necessarily have to take a full course load. So you could
Correct.
take less classes and it would give you an advantage. If you took less classes, but all of the classes you took were AP courses, right? Then you would have an advantage over the people who took AP courses plus an additional course that wasn't an AP course, because when you average that out, the person who took the extra course would end up, their GPA would be brought down because you're kind of watering down the AP courses as opposed to the person who didn't take that extra course. So
And so
I get
if
the
you are
point that
going
some
for
people.
class rank, you're correct. Right, so if I'm trying to be number 1, that is the type of behavior we are trying to disincentivize.
But I don't know,
because-
and I get what you're saying, but I don't know that we're disincentivizing it just by not recognizing it, right? We've disabled, and I don't know why, and that was one of my questions too. Why did we disable the GPA? When you log into your kid's Power School, it's disabled, you can't see what your kid's GPA is, your kids can't see what their GPA is. Was there a reason why they're not allowed to see what their own GPA is? Why they can't see it in the system? It fair as possible, and then people are still going to game it. But I don't know that by not recognizing it, you're still gonna have those same kids who want to have that higher rank, whether you acknowledge their higher rank or not. And so I don't know that we're solving the problem. And by recognizing the top 10 students, but not in the right order, they're still going to be trying to get into that top 10. So they're still going to try to get into the top 10. It's kind of like they're still going to do all the work, they're just not going to get the recognition for the work that they did. So in a sense, I think you're saying we're disincentivizing it, and that's why they're less likely to do it, because we're not encouraging it, we're not recognizing it. But
We're still gonna have those kids that want,
They're
that
still
are hungry for it.
And what's wrong with healthy competition to know who's number one? Why can't we have a winner?
Well, yeah, I don't have a problem with people knowing who was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10.
And kids will still know. They'll still know.
They'll
They're
know.
not-
Isn't that like
They'll
goal for
know.
these kids to be number one?
They'll make sure everybody else knows, so why can't we know?
I mean, I like the plus and minus.
I do. I
really-
like
and I like
everything
There's lots of
except-
pieces up there, right, I understand.
Yeah.
I don't
I-
like getting rid of the class rankings.
Nope.
I think
I
they
think
earned
I like
it, they
knowing
should
where I
be-
was.
They should be recognized for it.
I think when you're talking about,
It wasn't in the
there was an issue where parents were saying, okay, your kid can have a higher GPA, but because of because the number of credits and the way that we divide that out, they were having a lower class rank even though they had a higher GPA. And now we're going in the other direction where it's kind of, you had kids who wouldn't take certain classes because they were afraid it would negatively impact their class rank, but you're gonna have the same situation now, because if I'm a senior and say I'm taking these AP courses and then maybe I wanna take this one additional course, but that course isn't an AP course, well, now I'm probably not gonna take that course because it's gonna water down my GPA because it's not getting divided by the number of credits that I'm taking. So is there a way of finding middle ground between the two so that we are recognizing the additional courses that kids are taking? Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Because I feel like we're going from one extreme to the other, is there a way to go in the middle of that?
Somewhere in the middle. Is there something, can you, no
I think,
hybrid?
because I think the issue with class, I think the issue with the issue with class rank was that the biggest issue, which you're fixing, is that kids could come in from a different school district where they were able to take more classes, and then they have an advantage over our Pennridge students, which isn't fair. So I think the idea is we need to make it fair, but it's still going to exist. There's still going to be a rank, whether we recognize it or not. And so I think that's the discussion, is should it be recognized or shouldn't it? And I would err on the side of we should always recognize everyone for every area that they're exceptional in. And so if that's an area that these students are exceptional in, and I've heard that kids have been negatively impacted by their class rank because of the way that we do it. But if we're making it more fair, would students still be negatively impacted by it?
It'd be the reverse.
Well, no, I don't think it would be reversed, but I think the reason they were negatively impacted before is because their rank wasn't a true representation of where they fell based on the way that the old system ranked them.
So if that's cleaned up,
Right,
Plus
that's
in
the
the
divisor, well, that's the divisor.
we're really just taking it off the transcripts. You're not gonna have your whatever number out of how many kids, it's just not gonna be on your report card every year, right?
Is it now?
That is the recommendation from a transcript standpoint, yes, so the
Yeah.
final in terms of what's reported to.
And the only other thing is then the top 10 are just going to be read off alphabetically instead of in order of 1 through 10, which they're not pointed out as 1 through 10 now.
They are read.
Can we look into maybe if we want that feeling of recognizing them in order, keep doing it that same way, graduation, and forget the alphabetical? And really, we still are going to know a class rank, so if a parent really wants to know their kid's number, can't they call the guidance office and?
That would be the decision of the school. The answer is yes.
So,
I mean,
like,
obviously
'cause
they
it still
could.
exists,
Well, we're gonna have a
right?
GPA listing, we have to, right?
Yeah.
We have to keep GPA.
Still exists, it's
So
just
there will
not
be a
gonna go on the
GPA.
transcript, but it's still there.
Because you know I couldn't vote.
And so when you think about the systems that have moved away, because I am not naive. I do understand, I have lived with kids who have compared GPAs to figure out where they are in the top, whatever number your kid's in. Now, I don't know where that stops, and we probably have different arguments as to, does that stop at number 16, does that stop at number 40, does that stop at number 100? Like, who stops comparing them? But I'm not sure that's significant to this conversation, so let's talk about the top 10 kids. I do agree that they're gonna say, hey, look, Bill, I got a 4.81, what do you have? Right, and they know each other and they know who they are.
That's right.
The question is, does the school system then want Bill Kraus to make a decision about his classes simply because of class rank, or because Bill should be taking the courses he wants? So relate that to, I know children, both at Pennridge and in other systems, that have not taken elective courses because it hurts their GPA. Now, that's their choice, right? And there are kids in the top 10 who take elective courses, right? Now, they don't often take them all 4 years, but they can take them. I'm not saying you take every honors every paid, but there are lots of kids, sorry, I shouldn't say lots. There are many kids who choose not to take a course or choose to take a study hall instead of a course because it will hurt their GPA. What I claim is that recommending moving away from class rank is not going to stop the people from playing the top 10 game or the top 28 game or whatever you think that the top game is. It does say what's important to Pennridge. And I want to be able to say to a kid, hey, you're an art kid, take art. You're right, sorry, we don't have enough honors. We don't have enough honors courses in art. It's going to drop you. There's no way you could be number one, right? Because that's probably true. I don't know that as anecdotal fact, but that's probably true if you're taking multiple art courses because there aren't enough of them that are weighted. As opposed to a student who has a science bent who has a leg up, because there are plenty of science courses that are weighted, and so you can take that. And they're both okay, right? It would be my argument. And so, does class rank make kids play more games? make them more aware of, oh my gosh, I'm out of the top 100, so I better not take that ceramics course because it might make me 102? I don't know. Are those kids having those conversations? The question is, does Pennridge say, you know what, it shouldn't matter? Right? And we're still going to report it. We're still going to say what your decile is. Colleges are still going to know where you are. So if the point is to figure out who won and who lost, right, the kids are still going to know, and that information is still out there. Right? We're not pretending a 4.2 is number one in our class because we're not telling you. So the kid can go, yeah, I got a 4.2. Right? Yes, you did. And that was the 15th percentile. Colleges are still going to know that. The kid's still going to know that. The kid might know their rank. And so in terms of the information we're communicating, I agree. We're no longer communicating whether you were 15th or whether you were 20th. I'm trying to decide whether that is significant enough information to continue ranking, which I think has other collateral issues. And that's why the recommendation is what it is. It's why more than 50% of the schools don't do class rank. I mean, we're not the only ones having this conversation. We're not the only ones who have made this recommendation in terms of why they've gone away with it. I mean, it's not, and there is not a perfect system, right? And so if the conversation is, you know what, David, I love every bullet up there, but the class rank one, it's fine. Then we've made progress and moved forward. We're charged with bringing recommendations, right? We're charged with gathering feedback. I don't want to make any decisions until we hear from parents, kids, and faculty, right? And we're going to sit with an awful lot of teachers on Thursday. This is their world, right? Guidance counselors, this is their world. They're the ones who understand the games of this as well, right? So, all right, I'll stop talking.
This may be a dumb question, but can it be optional to a student whether or not they want their class rank on their transcript, or does it have to be everybody across the board? Some kids may want their rank on there, and some kids may not.
Sounds like a
Can't say
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I don't know how you would.
Find out.
That sounds like
Actually, I
a,
like that, but
Sounds like a
yeah.
power
it sounds like a lot of
Class
work for a
rank
little,
anyway, why
I
wouldn't you
mean.
just put it on there?
It's white out.
I think, you're saying there's a.
You didn't want it.
To your
They can
point,
come to you.
there
you go.
There's
Sorry.
a population of students.
Please see Mrs. Baines' comments, she'll
Small
write your
population.
passage.
Actually.
There's only a small population of students that this affects, so then there's only a small population that are taking these, who would be opting not to take the course that they want to take because it'll affect their GPA negatively.
I don't know how small that group is.
But-
Yeah, it's not everybody.
But those are the same students that those are the same students that this isn't going to fix that, because those students are gonna keep doing that no matter what. So the small group that it impacts is the small group that this change isn't going to impact. Do you know what I mean? Because the ones who are already doing it are the ones who are gonna keep on doing it. This isn't going to change whether or not they do that at all.
I think the hope is that when Dr. Bolton talked about what does Pennridge want, what do we want our messaging to be, as a teacher at heart, I never want to know that a student picked, and let's go high, AP Class A over AP Class B, because AP Class A is this amount of credits, because it's a lab class, and this class is not, and it's not, and I picked that class even though I wanted to take that class. And we want to see kids taking high-level classes, and that's one of the reasons for the incentivizing of AP. We want them to reach high, even if they don't get an A or an A+. We want them to have that experience. That, I think, everybody.
But don't they want the GPA more than this class then, so they've made that decision? They want this GPA, so they want that class. They don't want that GPA, they take that class that they want. Seems simple.
And so if their transcript
Right.
wasn't going to say 6 out of 529 versus 7 out of 529, are they more likely to pick the course they want or not? If the culture becomes, and I don't know how you measure that scientifically as to whether students would or would not do that if they have those choices in terms of are they picking a course because it is better for the GPA than another one. I feel for music students. I feel for art students. I feel for kids whose GPAs are routinely lower. I did a study when I worked in another school district because they were talking about class rank. And what to do, where I did a study and I studied the top 50 kids for the last 6 graduating classes. music kids were underrepresented, art kids were underrepresented based on the percentage they were of the population. And that's because they had to make a decision to take a course that was. Now, these were systems that didn't rank. So they were trying to decide if they were going to ranking. And that was one of the reasons they decided not to go to ranking, because they were afraid that if they ranked, then music kids and art kids would say, you know what, no, now you're telling me it matters if I'm 12 versus whether I'm 15. And one of the things philosophically we haven't talked about here yet is whether any of this truly is motivating for kids or not. There is lots of research that would say grades and GPAs are not motivating for kids. Now, I don't think that we need to debate that in terms of what you personally feel to be true, right? Because I don't have anything other than things I've read to say that to you. That non-graded systems don't make kids less competitive, right, than graded systems, that they don't strive for those types of things, because that's not internal enough, the way most people are made up. Although I do know there are kids who play games. Play games is the wrong word. There are kids who work to be number one or work to be in the top 10, right? Right, and they do what they need to do to be that, because that's a goal for them. And that is a great goal for them to do that. Right, exactly right, right. And the system benefits certain things, and so they do those certain things. And this system will benefit certain things, so they will do those things if that is their goal. Probably whether we report it or not.
What was the difference? It's like gymnastics, right? Where the difference between number 1 and number 10 is 1/100 of a. What was number 1's GPA last year, and what was number 10's
I
GPA?
haven't had that information.
The difference is they're small and they're calculated incorrectly mathematically, because we're taking
I know, I would
too
love to
many
get rid of
decimal
the
points.
divisor.
The mathematics says that you cannot do that, but we do it anyway.
We did talk about that, Dr. Yarnell.
But this will,
We did.
this will change that too by adding the plus and minus system.
Sure.
So you're not going to, it's not gonna be as close
As close,
anymore,
well,
because there's more
yeah.
differentiation between the grades. I
Well,
agree
I
with what
bet you're
Dr.
still close.
I agree with what you were saying about we don't want the kids, we would prefer the kids take what they want to take. But we're not gonna change their minds, they're still gonna do it anyway. So I just don't
think
know
it'll
that
lessen
Some of them,
It'll
you're not gonna
lessen
change
that
your minds
group
because
over
they're
time.
that kind of person,
But
but
and
there
those are
could
the ones
be
who are
some
doing,
who
and those are the
would.
ones who are doing, I guess I don't think that this decision is going to be, I don't think whether or not we report class rank is going to make a difference between whether the kid does or doesn't work the system to get as high as they can.
I think it'll lessen it over time though. I feel like you're always gonna have that group of students that want to be in
The
the top
bragging
10 of the
rights.
class, they wanna be number one. But I think it will take a student looking at their transcript as how they're doing as an individual. What courses did I take? How did I perform in those courses that I took? Instead of another thing on their transcript that says, and now how did I do compared to my peers? So they're having reflection for their own capabilities instead of comparing themselves.
Yeah, so it's like.
And I know you wanna compete with others, I mean, that's a skill, that is important and valuable too, but, maybe it makes them be more acceptable of their own strengths and focus on their own strengths and not compare it to somebody else that might be stronger in something in another area. And now has a higher GPA.
It's sort of like what I found with running for myself. You know, you end up in running kind of competing against yourself, more so than, because you're out running, how fast did I run this 5K? I'm not really would look at where I fell in the number of runners and want to be, in the top of your age group or whatever, but mostly, for me anyway, in running, it becomes more how have I improved, or where do I stand? I'm not gonna lie, I would still probably be looking at my number, because I still remember what number I was back in 1990, but I can see the value of, you're gonna be able to say I was cum laude, or, magna cum laude, you'll be able to say that, and so that kind of implies a ranking to me. And, it does rank you. Because think about a kid who goes to a super, super competitive school. To say I was number 20 at X school where everybody has a GPA that's sky high, whereas someone else could say they were number 20 out of a school district where the kids don't have it. It does mean different things in different places. So I think they're still going to be competitive. There's still going to be kids who are going to be paying attention to it, and you're not going to stop those kids no matter what you do. They're type A, and they're going to be paying attention to what number they are out to the 5th decimal.
And if they wanna know it, they can find it out.
Then they're going to find out.
What you're saying
So-
may be true, and let me just say, I cannot relate to your running metaphor. Can't do it, don't run, don't even understand how people do it, so. But I will say this, there is a huge emphasis